Hello, welcome to episode 7 of the Wool and the Forest podcast. I'd like to invite you now to take a few moments, if you haven't already, to light a stick of incense or light a candle or a little oil lamp, whatever you have, or all of the above. Bring some light into the experience. If you haven't done so, you can pause the video now and do that, and get yourself a cup of tea or something gentle to drink, and join me here for some silence and light. As we always do, let's start with a little moment for silence, for a little moment for breath awareness, and just bringing ourselves fully into this moment so that we can be here and available for this experience. I'm sitting here with my legs up on the chair that I'm seated on. You may sit the same way with your legs cross-legged up on the chair or with your feet firmly on the ground beneath you. However is most comfortable for you, with your spine erect but relaxed. And gently, gently, gently close your eyes. Just give your body a few moments to settle. Just like sand settling down onto the ocean bed. Let all the energies buzzing around inside you settle. Let all the thoughts buzzing around inside you settle. Watch as your breath, which may have been a bit quick and erratic, start to gently settle into a nice, easy rhythm. You don't have to breathe consciously. Your body already knows exactly how to breathe for you every single moment. Just step back and watch. Now, I'd like you to gently bring your attention to the tips of your nostrils. Feel the cool air coming in through your nose, and feel the warm air coming out. There's no need to breathe in any special way. Just watch. Just observe the breath coming in through your nostrils, the coolness at the tip of them, and the breath leaving through your nostrils with the warmth at the tip of them. Just watch that in and out of breath through your nostrils. There's nothing else for you to do. There's nowhere you have to go. There's nothing that you need to give your attention to. Just be here with your breath coming in and going out. Now, I'd like you to take a deep breath in through your nose, into your stomach. Take a deep breath in, and when your body is full of air, allow the breath to very slowly come out of your nostrils. And when you've sat in that silence for a few moments, gently, very gently, open your eyes. Namaskaram, Ayubowan. Welcome to another episode of Wool and the Forest podcast. What shall we call this episode? I haven't actually come up with a title. Shall we call it On the Other Side of the Big Heat? Because that's where we are. We're on the other side of this enormous heat wave, which you will hear something of during the rest of the episode. So yes, episode 7, On the Other Side of the Big Heat. Yes, that's what we'll call it today. I hope you all enjoyed, gained some value from that moment for silence and light. I always reiterate this in every episode, but it really is the most effective, most wonderful way to bring ourselves fully to this experience. So hope you are still enjoying it, and I hope you are still gaining value out of that moment that we give to silence and light at the very beginning of the podcast. So shall we carry on with the podcast and talk a little bit about what's in my hands and what's out of my hands and what's coming down the forest path and what changes have been happening in the verges, in the forest, in the woodline, all of that. So much to talk about. But first, tell me how you are. Have you all been enjoying your summers? Have you been suffering under the heat wave as we have? I mean, I wouldn't call ours suffering. It was only really 2 days of crazy heat. But I know a lot of people are suffering under extended periods of time of this heat wave. So how have you been? Have you done okay through that if you're in the Northern Hemisphere? If you're in the Southern Hemisphere and listening, how is your deep midwinter going? I remember being a Southern Hemisphere person for so many years, and this being the time that it felt a bit like Christmas, which was very odd because it was the middle of the year. But I'm sure this is the time that all the Southern Hemisphere brothers and sisters are in their woolies and in their knitwear and in their Ugg boots and in all their sheepy goodness, and hands full of wool, I'm sure, no doubt. So I hope your winters are going well, that you've had plenty of snow, if that's what you usually have, and if you don't, maybe you've had a little sprinkling this year, who knows. So wishing you all well as this month of July goes by. So let me know. I want to know how you're doing. Let me know in the comments. Write a few words, a couple of sentences. I love reading your feedback, whatever it is. I really value everybody who takes the time to leave a few words for me. So please do let me know how things are going in your lives at the moment. So, having said that, let's carry on with what's in my hands in terms of making and crafting and textile work. Well, there's a few things actually. Today into the studio, I brought my Crochet Mandala project. Can you see that? The Crochet Mandala by Yssabett Bueno. It's one of her patterns, the overlay crochet project that I spoke about a couple of episodes ago, and which I was struggling with and not making much progress with last 2-3 weeks. And then I changed tact with this. I ripped the whole thing back, started again, and deviated from the instructions given in the pattern by quite a bit, because I just wasn't feeling it. Things were just not going right for me with that particular weight of yarn and the combination with the hook size. So I just wanted to change it up. And I started by mixing not just weights of fiber, but I started mixing cotton, jute, and wool in this. And suddenly it is flying. Oh, it was so beautiful. It is flying out of my needles. In just the last week, I have made so much more progress. And I'm starting to, when a project really starts to go, your heart starts to sort of go pitter-patter, and you're always looking for a moment to work on it. That's happening now with this, which is the sign that it's working for me. So in my hands, very happy with it, really enjoying it, flying through, and I can't wait for what it will become. Now, because I am mixing weights with this, though, I will end up with a much larger pillow than Yssabett probably intended, but that's fine. I love huge pillows, not to sleep on. I don't actually sleep on a pillow. Well, at the moment, I use a very, very thin, barely pillow because I'm nursing my baby all through the night. But usually I don't sleep on a pillow. I sleep like a yogi. I sleep flat on my back with nothing between me and the mattress. It's the way I sleep the best. But I love huge pillows for cuddle time and for relaxed time and for just me time, as little as I get of that. I love big pillows, big cushy, whooshy pillows. And to think that I would crochet my own pillow, it's going to bring me a lot of joy. So yay, in my hands, flying out of my hands, and very happy with that. So that's one thing I'm doing, the Crochet Mandala project. Another thing that's in my hands is I think I mentioned this in the last episode, that I was doing some eco printing on one of my favorite overalls made out of Sri Lankan linen that my mum had gifted to me a while back. That is still in my hands, meaning I've collected, I mordanted the cotton, the overalls, and I did a bit of like a preliminary round of eco printing, which didn't turn out as I wanted it to. So that's still waiting to be done. And I'm really hoping that I can finish it this week and wear it for the next episode, because it's my favorite pair of overalls and I miss having it to just sort of jump into during the warmer days. So that's in my hands. And what else do my notes tell me? Oh, yes. Knitting on winter socks. I know, it might sound atrocious to be talking about knitting on winter socks in the middle of all this heat that everybody's experiencing, but temperatures have gone right back to normal on the Olympic Peninsula. We are back to a balmy 21, 22 degrees centigrade during the day. Cool nights. I mean, cold enough really for me to have to close everything up and put on my pajama pants. And am I being kissed by incense? Incense smoke. Hopefully it's not getting in the way of the picture. So I'm just going to move that. There we go. So balmy, 21, 22 degrees, lovely cool, almost cold nights, misty mornings. So because of that, it's wind from the Pacific just makes everything okay in the summer here, because we live right on the coastline, like overlooking a bay. So it's beautiful, and therefore have been able to actually touch wool without, being shocked by it and swung across the room by the sheer, stickiness and warmth of it all. Of course, I didn't touch anything during those days of the heat wave, but things are coming back. So this is something that's been in my hands actually for some time, to be perfectly honest. This is a pair of socks that I am knitting. I haven't written the pattern for it. I'm actually working on the second pair at the moment. And I'm writing the pattern as I do that second pair. I started this in the winter, actually, after midwinter solstice. It was sometime after New Year's. Burned through the first tube and didn't get on with the rest of it. So this is actually, funnily enough, for someone who has knitted socks for my entire family and many, many pairs for my Arik, for my husband. I don't have any knitted socks of my own. It's funny, I know. I've turned many of the things that I've knitted for him, socks, into patterns, but I realized that I don't have a single pair of knitted socks of my own. So this is going to be the first pair of socks I've ever knitted for myself. And it's being knit with a yarn that was gifted to me by a friend who lives in Denmark. I purchased some yarn from her and she sent me some extra naturally hand-dyed yarn. I'm loving it. It's kind of a bulky-ish, I think a heavy worsted leaning on a bulky sort of weight yarn. And I am knitting it as a tube and top down, actually cuff down tube, and then adding an afterthought heel. This is actually, there's a few firsts in this sock. This is also my first cuff down sock that I've knitted. Yeah, I actually did a cuff down sock. And I've always avoided cuff down. Well, not avoided, straight up not done it. I always preferred toe-up socks with a Flegel heel. That was like always my way to do and design socks. But this time, I don't know, it just worked out that way. And I did a bit of Russian grafting. And I believe that is why I wanted to do a cuff down, because I found Russian grafting and realized it was like the most straightforward, non-convoluted way of closing up a pair of socks at the toe. It was just a genius method. So another first pair of socks for me and first pair of cuff down that I'm knitting. So that's in my hands. It's using a few different techniques. I'm excited to write the pattern and hopefully that will be ready for release middle of fall, something like that for the knitting season, as it were. That's in my hand. I'm going to pop that right back into my project bag here. So what else do we have to talk about, Ducky? Knitting on winter socks. Oh, yes. An enormous bed sheet I have written here. Yes, so I am working on some more indigo work. There's always indigo work happening, of course. And one of the things I'm working on right now that I sort of worked on a little bit yesterday is this bit of clamp dyeing that I'm doing on an old bed sheet that belonged to my mother and father, actually. They left it for me the last time they visited, which was in the October of 2019. It was like, I think it was in the middle of my second trimester or at the very end of my first trimester pregnancy with Usha, with baby. And that was the last time I saw them, because soon after that, COVID happened. And that was that. They were in lockdown in New Zealand and couldn't come to me, and I haven't seen them yet, but they brought with them a whole bunch of their sheets, bed sheets and pillowcases and things, because my mother is always convinced that I don't have enough bed sheets and enough pillowcases and enough anything. Maybe it's a South Asian mother thing, but they're constantly bringing me sheets and pillowcases, and when they come to visit, they will look around in my linen closet. She will look around and go kind of, this child doesn't have enough linen. Every time she'll either go out there and buy it or send me bunches of linen, bed linen. So anyway, in an attempt to fix my linen shortage, she brought a bunch of bed sheets, and some of it were things they've had for a really long time, actually. And this one is one of them. And I have actually slept on the same bed with them on that bed sheet. I have memories of that. And I wanted to kind of uplift it a little bit. And I thought I would use it just because it's such a gigantic bed sheet to do some clamp dyeing with my indigo vat in it. And that is currently in my hands. I've done the clamping. I have a little bit of stitching to finish on it. And I'm hoping that tomorrow it'll go into my dye vat and come out looking reborn. So that's in my hands. My embroidery project, that's it. That's what I was talking about last week. I abandoned that wholesale because this is the embroidery project that we actually was commissioned to do. This is part of my collaborative work that I've been doing with Arek. I've done already 2 of them. I showed one of those in the last episode. We call them stitchwork, dot work stitchwork projects. And we were doing one of these. We were commissioned to do one for a friend. We were replicating a tattoo that Arek had designed for her, that she has on her body. And she wanted a version of that tattoo in my stitchwork. So I was doing this on a canvas fabric that was just not working out. I did quite a bit of stitching on it and just ripped it back because I was not happy with the way the thread was working through the canvas. It was far too open. It didn't look open initially when I hooped it up, but the weave was actually quite loose. So I've abandoned that and will be going right back to stitching it on raw denim, which I haven't done yet. I haven't transferred the project, but that is also technically still in my hands. And the felting acorn creature, which I think I showed you last time, I have not made any progress on that. Still in my hands. I wonder if in my hands is going to become the longest portion of this podcast, because, things are constantly piling up. Are you starting to see a pattern of in my hands? Yes. This is what happens when you're trying to start something to support our life. You have a little baby who's 15 months old, who nurses all the time, and you have 2 little babies under 7 years of age who also need a lot of attention and love and engagement. And yeah, this is what happens. Everything just ends up in your hands and not out of them. But yes, that little creature that I showed you yesterday, I haven't made much more progress on him, my guardian of the acorn forest. So that's still in my hands. And here I have said, oh yes, something very big that's in my hands at the moment. In our combined hands, me and Arek, is a dye kitchen. Been meaning to talk to you about this, actually. Just a little tea break. Today in my little tea jar, I have some lovely, lovely garden tea that I picked freshly just before I came into the studio. I have white clover, crimson clover, a little bit of dried lemon balm from last year, and chamomile. Yeah, chamomile flowers, that's it. And, just before, when I had brewed the tea and brought it over here to the studio, and then I walked out and walked back in again, just in those couple of minutes, the whole place was full of the most delicious scent. I wish you could smell it. And it's the combination of, I think, the lemon balm and the chamomile that is so aromatic, so aromatic. Clover, I found, is not actually that aromatic unless you cook it. White clover I will often turn into cordials, and then you get a really nice potent aroma when it becomes quite concentrated. But in this form, in tea form, I've found that both crimson and white are not really that aromatic, and it's the chamomile that is just freshly picked. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. And all of this is foraged. The white clover is actually foraged from just our land, and the crimson is being grown as a cover crop at the moment. And the chamomile just grows in my garden. So, little tea break before I talk to you about this very big project that is in my hands, both me and Arik, and mostly in Arik because he's doing the building. So the last couple of weeks, but especially so in the last 7 days, we've been very busy with building the dye kitchen for wool and the forest. It has been a big project for Arik, and it's still ongoing. Because we realized very early on, because our cottage is so small, most of you will know that we live in a one-room cottage, and the cottage kitchen is tiny. I do a lot of I run a mini one-woman patisserie and kitchen out of that tiny little kitchen. And it's simply not big enough to be able to do the kind of dyeing that I am doing, and even more so that will more intensely happen in the coming weeks and months. So we realized that we needed to find a solution for the dyeing. And we have decided to convert part of the garage into a dye kitchen. And that is what's been happening, the planning for it, the drawing for it, the sourcing for it, Arik building it, me coming and testing it out, seeing if it works. Goodness, we've learned a lot about what it takes to build a dye kitchen because we're winging it, we don't know really much about it, and we've researched a tiny bit, but really not much. And fitting it into, it's been quite an interesting back and forth between his understanding of building and plumbing and what works and what doesn't, and the way I work with especially Indigo. I mean, the Indigo is my vat, and my work with the vat is the most important part of that. And the way I work with the fibers and the dyeing and all that, we've had this little dance with that back and forth, and it's been wonderful, actually. We've learned a lot about how you can create a dedicated space for natural dyeing, what is involved, what works, what doesn't work, what you need, what you don't really need, all of that. And it's been a wonderful experience and ongoing. So technically, because that is very much part of, brings to the fore Arik's skill set, that is also still, I consider it a project that's in my hands, because it's like almost everything we do, it's joint, united in crafting and making. That's what we are, me and Arik. So very big project, and I will reveal bits of it as time goes by, and let you know how that goes, and whether by the next episode we will have a functioning dye kitchen. Perhaps we will, perhaps we won't. Either way, big project in our hands. So without much ado, and while I continue to enjoy my little cup of tea, I would like to take you out into the woodline, into the verge, into the hedges, and into the edges of this Olympic forest that we live in, and tell you a little bit about what has been changing. Obviously today, in changes in the Verge, the big chatter is about the heat wave. Oh my goodness. So before we step into changes in the Verge, let's talk a little bit about this heat wave. It was intense. Oh my. We were pummeled by it for about 2 days, really. It was about a 3 or 4 day lead up to it, but it was 2 days of intense heat. And it took a lot out of me just to make sure everybody was cool, that everybody was eating the right things, drinking in the right way, that I was giving the girls several hose downs on the deck. That's how we kept cool. I mean, we kept cool Sri Lankan style, the way I grew up in the, pre-monsoon period, where temperatures would be like this for days and days and days. And I put them on the deck, got the hose, and just hosed them down several times a day. And this was Arik's first sort of experience of heat, really high heat with us. And it was interesting to see how much better he fared compared to the way I have seen him suffering under the heat in the Netherlands. So it was wonderful, in a way, to know that I was taking care of the entire family in the right way, and everybody came through it swimmingly, beautifully, unharmed. So that was interesting, and we did sleep all of those days where the temperature was just insane. We slept in the tent. We pitched up a tent that my dad had gifted this year, just in time. It's quite a big tent, almost like a mini yurt. We put it up in the garden area at the front of the house, and we slept there. And that was just. I grew up in a very outdoor life, especially my years in Sri Lanka, and sleeping in a tent. Sleeping outdoors. In New Zealand, I used to just not even pitch up a tent. I would just go out and be in my sleeping bag in the summer under the stars. It's something that has always been so close to me my entire life. It's something that nourishes me from the inside out. I'm like a different human being when I wake up after sleeping outdoors. And I had missed that over the last few years of being a mother and being with the girls and being out here alone and not really wanting to do that, not feeling safe enough and secure enough to do that in a land where I didn't know the feeling of safety versus danger. I hadn't been here long enough, and there's significant wildlife out here. I mean, yes, so in Sri Lanka, but it's the land of my birth, so you understand it and feel it, and you're able to read it so differently because that's where you breathed your first breath. So it was so wonderful to be able to do that again. It was beautiful. By far the best gift the heat wave gave me was that, and the girls loved it. Baby slept well. It was wonderful. I'm not sure so much about Arik though. Mosquitoes tend to love him. So yeah. Anyway, everybody enjoyed it in the end. So that was the heat wave. And the rest of the chatter for changes in the Verge is really gardening. I've been spending a lot of time with my plots, about to cut down the crimson clover and get it ready to just gently dig it in. And my sunflowers are, I think, very, very close to blooming, maybe 2-3 weeks away. My calendula flowers are blossoming. The chamomile is blossoming. So it's wonderful to see all these things come to life. Also, my wildflower box in the last 2 weeks has just exploded. My wildflower box is something that sits in front of the cottage, not in the garden side, the other side. And it's basically this rectangle of earth that was there when I moved in. It was covered in, just everything really. And over the years, the last few years, I have been just watching to see what takes seed in that box every year, what grows in each spring, what comes to life. And every single spring, I will watch to see what new arrivals, what new flowers, herbs have arrived, and I will take away whatever is not working. I will take away anything that is too aggressively taking over, but not actually sowing any seeds in there. And it's incredible over the last 6 years, how this self-seeded border really has taken shape. Now it is just full of the most beautiful colors and all flowers, perennials and some herbs that are doing really well. They've really claimed that space, and they all seem to work beautifully together in a way that's would not be possible, I think, if you consciously planned it and gardened it intentionally to be a certain way. So it's my little experiment in wild gardening, and it's beauty at this time of year, especially when all the Shasta daisies, which you can see here, actually, I have some in a little vase here to brighten up the studio. The Shastas are just flourishing in there, and they're by far the most dominant, rising so tall out of the box, and everything else sort of peeks out. All the other colors of the rose campions and the sweet williams and the what else is growing in there? Lemon balm, even the lavender that's flowering now. It's all peeking through underneath the Shasta. It's quite beautiful. So that's giving me a lot of joy seeing that. I've also been doing a lot of seed savings. I've been going around seeing all the spring perennials that are now starting to wilt and fade away. I've been saving seeds for next year to bring some of them closer to the cottage and actually grow them in a more intentional way around, just to border the plots that I already have. I've been saving seeds from foxgloves, saving seeds from wild plantain and from ribwort plantain and a few others. So that's what's happening. And now, without any more chatter, let's jump straight into changes in the Verge. I do love Thuja Plicata. Plicata means plaited, and it refers to how the leaves are folded and compressed in this sort of plaited way up the tree's branches. It's the most beautiful thing. Thuja Plicata, the western red cedar, is an incredibly rare tree. It is only one of 4 in the genus and grows in a very, very narrow strip of the Pacific Northwest and is entirely native to this part of the world. And it has a special connection to the Olympic Peninsula, the giant arbo vitae, the giant tree of life. I adore it till the ends of the earth. The tallest Thuja can grow up to 200 feet tall. The tallest giants of these cedars are found right here on the Olympic Peninsula. The largest of the western red cedars is actually found near Lake Quinault in the Olympic rainforest. And some of these that survive to this day on the peninsula are almost 1,400 years or older. The Thuja Plicata is a phenomenal and profound being, revered and worshipped to the extent that a western red cedar was never felled intentionally by native peoples. And you know, when you see her, you cannot help but feel the sacredness of her. And yes, her with her cinnamon brown cones, she is a she. She is one of the most feminine aspects of this landscape. No other tree on this landscape dances with the Pacific breeze the way Thuja does. She arches and spreads and moves and sways, and she has stolen my heart from the first moment I laid eyes on her. One day when I am gone from these lands, the one being that I will long for and miss the most will be Thuja. There is no heaviness in my heart that cannot be cured by just sitting under her grace. Heart is lifted and lightened and filled with the awe that she embodies. So welcome back. I hope you enjoyed Changes in the Verge today. We are going to carry on with what's out of my hands. Ooh, what's out of my hands? What have I got here? Wedding sari fabric. Oh, I think we're about to be disturbed. You can hear big stomping feet coming up the studio steps. Is there a munchkin awake? Oh, hello there. Waiting for them to, there we go, walk down the steps, and I was also waiting for a very low-flying aircraft. We have a lot of low-flying sort of single-seater, double-seater aircrafts, those little tiny ones, sort of like Cessnas that fly over here all the time because we have a local airstrip not too far away, people coming on to the peninsula, people coming on private planes. Stopping here and going to the islands, like San Juan's and the Orcas Islands and things like that. So, and it's heavy tourist season on the Olympic Peninsula. It's the only time we have non-locals living here or coming here is because the winters are rough. Not many people venture out into the Olympics in the winter. So, yeah, I was just waiting for that sound to pass away. I think that's good. All right, so let's carry on with what is out of my hands. What projects have I actually finished? What have I got to show you? A few things. Oh, well, there's another one. I hope I hope I can edit these out. And if I don't, well, you can blame adventurers and swashbucklers of the air for all this auditory disturbance. So, something I'm really excited to show you that has come out of my Indigo vat and is giving me a lot of joy just to look at and fondle and imagine what it will become is this beautiful fabric. Well, it's not fabric, it's a sari. This gorgeous thing, this gorgeous sari, was my wedding sari. When Arik and I got married, this is what I wore. Now, it's in 2 pieces at the moment. I know what you're thinking, sacrilege. You tore your wedding sari in half. Oh, the horror. It's not like that, really. But it's in 2 pieces at the moment. So this is a Kashmiri silk, hand-woven, pure silk Kashmiri sari, which has been hand-painted, and it used to belong to my mother. So the sari itself is I think it's almost like 40-something years old, maybe even over 50 years old. Yeah, it's over 50 years old. It's coming on 60. A very precious sari, and because it belonged to my mother, I wore that for my wedding with Arik. And something quite interesting happened at the wedding. Now, when Arik and I got married, little Usha was already born, and she was just over a month old. I think she was like 6 weeks or something. And she lived on me in a woven wrap all the time. And even for the wedding, I knew that there was no way that, because there were no grandparents, we got married in the middle of the COVID lockdown, soon after I gave birth. And there was nobody at the wedding who could do the job of holding her because all the people who were at the wedding were required to be there. I had a couple of very, very good friends, my only really, truly good close friends here in the US on the Peninsula and in Washington State. They were there as witnesses, and they were required to be there present to do their job as witnesses. And we had a local judge who turned up as our marriage officiator. And there were all kinds of rules about who you could have and who you couldn't have because it was in the middle of the big COVID lockdown. So there was no one to take charge of a tiny little newborn, even if she had allowed them to take charge of her, which she probably wouldn't have. So I wore her on me, and literally 5 minutes before the officiary or the officiant, whatever it is, the official term, the judge turned up in our house. I was wearing her, and she had the most almighty baby poo. So little Usha decided for 2 days prior to the wedding that she was not going to poo. She was going to hold it all in. Hope you don't mind me talking about baby poos and so. I have no idea. I'm assuming that you don't mind. I know if you're a mother or have been a mother or a grandmother or whatever, that you definitely don't mind. But Maybe the others are kind of turning away or pretending not to hear me right now. But anyway, there was a massive explosion of baby poo out of her diaper and onto my sari. So the official turns up. I see the explosion. The explosion happens. I'm like, oh no! And in that moment, I see the judge driving down the path, parking in front of the cottage. And I quickly texted my mom and said, I don't know what to do. Little Usha just pooed all over, big breast milk poo, yellow as turmeric, on my wedding sari. And she was like, oh, don't worry, that's so auspicious. How auspicious to be smeared in turmeric poos just before you get married. And she was like, just wipe it off and wear it. And I did. I just wiped it off, just gently washed it, put the sari back on, put the baby back in the wrap and on me, and carried on with the marriage ceremony. And so what happened afterwards is that I saw that because the sari had been kept wet, and this is a very old silk sari, so the silk has been, getting weaker anyway. And because the sari was wet and I had tied it and had the weight of a baby on me, and there was a lot of tying and pulling and tugging going on, in that spot where she had her big explosion, it tore quite significantly at the end of the day. So I knew I was not going to be able to wear this sari again as a sari, or preserve it as a sari even. So it had been sitting in my closet for a while. And when I started my new Indigo vat, I wanted to kind of almost inaugurate it in a very auspicious, special way. And I knew that I wanted to overdye this in indigo and turn it into a dress. Now, my original plan for this had been to turn it into a dress in time to wear for our wedding anniversary, which was celebrated couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I can't remember. Anyway, just before the heat wave anyway. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to sew it up as a dress, which is something else that's in my hands right now. But I did have time to dye it in time. So it was dyed in time for the anniversary, but I didn't have a dress to wear. So this is something that's really given me a lot of joy. It's beautiful how it came out. The silk mixed together with the other dyes or the paints that the original artist would have used to paint this sari, it came together so beautifully. It's magnificent. It has a silvery sort of almost metallic sheen in the silk that the indigo has brought out and sort of enhanced. So that's gorgeous. I'm in love with it, and I cannot wait to have a dress to show you once it's stitched up. I'm drafting the dress pattern as we speak. In fact, I'm kind of using freeform drafting on the dress form to create the pattern. It's going to be a nice, flowy, loose, open, comfortable, summery dress because we got married in the middle of summer. Literally in the middle of summer, like the day before midsummer. So yes, that is happening, and hopefully I'll have a dress to show you in the upcoming episodes. Lots of joy in that, in my hands, or out of my hands rather, the dyeing part of it. The other thing that's out of my hands is, I'm not sure if I showed this to you in the previous episode. I may have. Is a bit more of indigo dyeing. This blue jumper, which is something I designed a couple of years ago and then wore to death. And then I gave it a new lease of life it's my own pattern. Never wrote it down. It's wonderfully comfy, cropped jumper. And has a bit of like an open lacework yoke and all kinds of fun piecing going on, the rest of it. That got a second dunk in the indigo vat actually and came out looking even more beautiful, got a real sort of depth of color that I felt like it didn't have with the first dip. So that is out of my hands. What else? Oh, the batik skirt that I spoke of in the previous episode is out of my hands too, and it turned out very prettily. I can show you some footage of it as we are speaking right now because I don't actually have it with me. I have taken photos of it. I have shared it on Instagram, and it feels so wonderful to be back with batik at last, because batik was, as I mentioned in a post on Instagram recently, it was the very first sort of textile art technique that I ever learned. I still remember the day when it happened, and it's very special to be back at it. I remember I had just come back to Sri Lanka from having lived in India for a few years, and I was put into an all-girls Buddhist school where they did a lot of these traditional crafts and things from a very early age, introducing it to the girls. And I remember a class where we did batik, and it's almost like the memories burnt into my mind. I drew out a little butterfly, and the teacher taught me how to wax it. And of course, she did the dyeing bit herself because I was only like 8 years old. And I still remember my little square of a butterfly coming out of the vat and dripping, and seeing the butterfly's image resisted on the fabric. And I was like, oh, how did that happen? Did I make that happen? Yeah, it was my first experience of textile magics, and I've come back to it in a big way, and it's something that you'll see very much of in the weeks and months, and hopefully, if all goes well, years to come. A lot of batik. Batik is going to become, just like indigo, a very significant part of my offerings of what we're doing here with wool and the forest. So, batik skirt done. And I did say that I wanted to speak more about my mother's textile work. And I'm starting to think perhaps this episode is not the one for speaking about her work, because yes, I think I'll save it for the following episode, because I believe I'm going to have some more batik work done where my mother's art, her textile art and her textile work and the research and incredible work that she did is going to come together with my own work. I think I'm going to actually have something physically to share with you that will show that. So that will be the opening. I think that will be the opportunity to speak a bit more about my mum and the work she's done, the incredible work she's done. But all I will say is that I think I may have mentioned this in the last episode, that I finally got my hands on a book of motifs that she had many books of motifs of all her original motifs that she had researched and developed into weavable and batikable motifs. She actually introduced a lot of those motifs were introduced into the textile language, the visual language in Sri Lanka, from the work that my mum did. So I acquired one of the books. So I think one of maybe two that are still surviving. And it's like a treasure in my hands. So yeah, let's speak more about that in the next episode for sure. Okay, so more textile work is also out of my hands. I've been doing quite a lot of time has been spent with my indigo vat. And there's so much to share. I'm not even sure I'll be able to today. But this wonderful skein is, I believe I'll have to take a picture of this and show it to you later. This is one of the ones I showed you in the previous episode, I think maybe 2 episodes ago, but it took another dunk in the indigo vat and came out looking even more beautiful and purple. And I did that also with another one of those hangs. I wanted to see how they would change in the new vat, because both of these skeins were dyed in the old vat, and then I just sent them for a very short dip into the new vat. And oh my, they just look amazing. So those two things are out of my hands as well. But I've actually done some new indigo work that I want to show you that's hanging here on my dress form. So let me just get those. So I have been doing some indigo over dyeing, and goodness have I been having fun. These are all, again, if the lighting doesn't work out, when I look at this footage later, and if it hasn't worked out, I will show it to you in probably pictures that will magically appear before you right now. I've been doing some over dyeing on these skeins of single ply worsted wool that I had in my stash already. I didn't purchase these. And oh my goodness, the fun I have had with these. This incredible color was created by over dyeing. The original color was it was like a lime green, but not even. It was a very, very, very light lime green. It's kind of an off color. Almost minty, like the mintiness of mint flavored ice cream. That kind of color, that kind of green. Sort of faded, not really vibrant, nothing much going on in there. And then the indigo changed everything. And this is after 2 very short dips in the vat, in my new vat. And, when this came out, that's when I knew that I was on the right path, because, the joy I felt at seeing this blue is the reason that I have the connection that I do with indigo. And this, to me, is what I call Pearl of the Indian Ocean blue, or Sri Lankan blue, or sapphire blue, because this is the color of the oceans around Sri Lanka. This is the color of the ocean I lived in for most of my life growing up there, that I, born in the water, lived in the water as much as I did on the land. This is the color of that part of my life that I remember so well. Sunshine, like being under the water, diving under the coral reefs, looking up and seeing the sun shining through the water. That blue is this blue. And on a very, very sunny, beautiful day, when you go to the beaches in certain parts of the coastline and you just look through the coconut trees and you see a particular type of blue where the sun is just at the right angle, this is that blue. Golden sands and sapphire sea. Just looking at it makes me so incredibly happy, because it is being home. This is the blue that I was born on. It's the blue that I interacted and engaged with every single moment. Growing up, it's the background blue of my life, it's indigo. So, really happy with that. And this color, this gorgeous, gorgeous green, was what I got from over dyeing, again, a not very nice yellow. It was a sort of a very weak-ish yellow, quite bright, but not the kind of yellow I like. And I over dyed it and got this gorgeous, gorgeous green. And I think this is something I'm going to be doing a lot of. Over dyeing yucky yellows and turning them into beautiful greens. For me, this green is very much a sort of a lush, tropical green. It's not an evergreen type of green. It's a tropical green. There's a lot of light in it. Gosh, there's a lot of light in it. Jewel toned almost. It is definitely an emerald, sort of like a light emerald green. So that is gorgeous. That's what I got. And then we have this lavender yarn, which was a result of over dyeing a fairly pale pink. And I only dipped this one once because I felt like I got exactly the lavender I wanted from the first dip, which was, it was just a very short dip. And the pinks, they're actually still very ever so slightly variegated. There's pinks showing through. It's almost like watercolor, when you're building up layers with watercolors and you have the base lighter colors showing through. That's exactly the effect I've got with this yarn, and it's beautiful. Again, it's something that I'm going to do more of with my indigo dyeing, is allowing the base colors to shine through like on a watercolor painting. It just brings it so alive. There's so much more dimension. There's so much more depth and aliveness to it, because there's aspects that shimmer and shine and peak from different angles, and it's lovely. I don't know what I'll make with it because it's just one small skein, but it's there. Maybe I'll offer it. Who knows? So 3 skeins that came out of my vat. And I've also been doing some cotton sampling, which I haven't shown you yet. This gorgeous cotton yarns, 100% cotton, that I have been experimenting with, sampling with, to do some embroidery actually, for some stitch work, not just embroidery, stitch work. And oh my goodness. Again, I haven't spoken about this on Instagram yet, but let me show you again. I've been sampling, so the yarn, the thread rather, it's like a heavier weight thread. And I've been sampling muslin and some cotton canvas, organic cotton canvas, also for various textile stitch batik fabrics that are projects and work that's coming out of Wool and the Forest. So it's been a wonderful sort of sampling session. And several things I want to say about this, that I have been astounded at the kind of colors I'm getting with just single dips. And this is just a single dip in my current vat. This vat is so happy. My ability to read it and the connection I'm forming with it it's something that I can't actually put into words. It's becoming so intimate, so beyond that space of language, beyond that space of sort of intellectual understanding. It's become an extension, such a natural, close extension of my life. And the indigo is paying me back because my sensitivity to the vat is increasing all the time and by leaps and bounds, because I have surrendered any kind of desire to control. I'm just watching and learning and being sensitive in all the ways that are not emotional and not intellectual. I'm in a very different space when I'm with the vat, when I'm reading the vat, it's communing. It's a level of sensitivity to a dimension that you cannot really access through the mental processes of your mind, or even through the emotional processes of your mind. So it's been amazing to see the results of that kind of interaction in the actual work, in the actual fibers and textiles coming out of the vat. It's incredible. And the cotton is where it's really, shining as well. And another thing is that the wool that you saw there, that is completely unmordanted wool. I don't mordant my wool at all before it goes into the vat. I just usually soak it for about 30 minutes in a little vinegar bath, and that's it. That's all the pre-treatment the wool gets. The cotton I've been mordanting with botanically sourced mordants from just here where we live. And I'll speak more about this maybe going forwards. Definitely will write more about it on Instagram. So if you don't already follow me there, pop on over to @Wool and the Forest on Instagram, where I share so much writing about indigo and about my processes with natural dyeing and about decolonizing indigo culture and indigo dyeing and bringing so much, reclaiming our indigenous connection to indigo in a big way. So I do write a lot about that. So please, if you're interested to read more, you can come and pick up on those old posts. So yeah, I've been mordanting with a little discovery of a natural mordant. Quite, I stumbled into it really. It was something that happened when I was walking around our land and just looking around and putting myself in the shoes of my ancestors who lived in such close, incredibly close connection with nature, and not unconsciously. the connection with nature in our part of the world was brought into the culture and ritualized and made a part of the spiritual life and processes of the people. There's an entire spiritual system that was created to consciously enhance our receptivity to nature, our sensitivity to nature. And it was not something that was just practiced by a few, shaman or medicine men of just a small segment of society and then sort of passed down as superstition or used as a way to control the wider population. That happened in many other parts of the ancient world. In our part of the world, this was disseminated to every single human being in the culture on those lands and consciously made a part of the population's day-to-day life, ritualized and used as a way, almost like eating, food or breathing air. This was considered that important, this ritual practice of connecting and opening our receptivity with the natural world and creating a deeper and deeper connection. So where was I going with this? So yes, so I was walking around trying to be in that frame of mind when I looked around and started looking at the land and the trees and the plants and the soil immediately around me, thinking, what would my ancestors have done? What would they have used? How would they have looked at everything that was growing and thriving and alive directly around them and brought that? How would they have penetrated the mysteries lying just beneath the leaves and the seeds and seen that there was something there that they could use to bring into their work? And that's when I stumbled across what has now become probably my favorite way to mordant cotton. Might be the only thing I stick with. I don't know. I'll probably continuously experiment as I keep being whispered to by this land that I live on, keep being whispered to by the plant beings who I share this land with. They're constantly talking to me, constantly opening up their secrets, the more receptive and open I become to them. So, yeah, mordanting. And I did it as a cold mordant, so I didn't boil or heat the fabric in any way. I just allowed time to work its magic. And my goodness, did these fibers take the color. Of course, it's a combination. It's a combination of starting to know my indigo vat in a very profound way and also starting to understand how to prepare fabric in a very natural way without any need for any chemicals, any mined metals, anything brought from outside at all. Just taking what is given to me right here without harming anyone or anything or any part of this planet. So, out of my hands and giving me lots of joy. Now, I am probably running out of time and Arik is probably thinking, what is she going on about in there in that studio? I'm going to try to wrap up. I have actually done some spinning, but I won't have time to share it with you today. I will share it in the next episode, okay? I promise. I finished some spinning. I know. It's just the most incredible thing. It's unbelievable. Little Usha is actually letting me sit at the spinning wheel. I mean, for like 10 minutes at a time, but still, she's letting me sit there long enough to finish. So, yes, I will share that next time. Now, let's talk about, where are we going? Oh, yes, a moment for magpies. Let's go to a moment for magpies very quickly and see what's in my little magpie basket today. So, what do we have in our magpie basket today? In my magpie basket? Well, there's a few things that are from nature and a few things that are from my beloved, from Arik. These two beautiful spoons are technically, well, they are from nature and they're from him at the same time. Let me move this out of the way so you can actually see these in focus. I hope they are in focus. Yeah. So these are two gorgeous spoons that he carved from the tree that he felled in the previous episode, actually. I don't know if you can see them there. And he did his beautiful artistry with wood burning. I love the way he draws. I've always loved it. I've always been very, very profoundly attracted to it. So these are hand-carved spoons that he made for me from the wood, from some of the wood that came from that tree. And goodness, they're the most beautiful spoons. He's given me a collection of spoons over the years as gifts. I mean, his spoons are the ones I love the most to use, but this is gorgeous. Because the grain of that wood is so beautifully aligned and straight. He had I know that he really enjoyed making these too. So they're in my basket. I also have another offering from him in my basket today. Are these dear little eggs, these wooden eggs that he loves to wood burn. And this one has all kinds of scenes of summer in it. I really hope I'm getting this in focus. Yeah, there we go. Has all kinds of scenes of summer, bees, ants, flowers, daisies growing. So very appropriate for my magpie basket. I also have some thistle heads, dried thistle heads that I found lurking in the sunroom of all places, that we had picked actually in the middle of winter when we all as a family went up on a little hike to a sacred site for the original native indigenous peoples of this land. It's a place called Tamanoa's Rock, and these came from there. And it's been a long time, but I didn't actually see them till recently. So I popped them in my basket, collected them as it were. And there's a couple of offerings from the beach, a couple of seashells, and a very pretty white quartz-like, well, probably quartz stone. And this wonderful, huge beast of a thing, this thing, I don't know, we don't actually know what it was. This was magpied off the beach. And this is basically, it's a big hunk of concrete holding two huge pieces of metal, which I don't know, they look like maybe old screws or something that held something really big. And we found this when we were at the beach. It was actually my second daughter who found it and came running after me saying, Mama, you like this for your magpie basket? So I thought, oh yeah, not only would I like this for my magpie basket, it would be perfect as a source of iron for all kinds of textile works, because whenever I do use iron in my textile work, whether it's for eco-printing or as a mordant or whatever, I only ever use iron that is unmined. So it comes from, well, as a result of day-to-day living, a lot of it from Arik's own de-rusting and restoring tools and things like that. And here, sometimes a wonderful gift from the ocean as a source of iron. So that's my magpie basket today. So I hope you enjoyed that tiny little break into moment for magpies. Oh dear. Yes, I have definitely been taking far too much time here. So I'm going to try to wrap up really fast. What's down the forest path? Well, down the forest path, I'm hoping that the dye kitchen will be finished, that I will have most likely a larger scale batik work to show you in the next episode. And I am also working on getting these soothcast readings out. We're working on it. It's coming together, but time is the problem at the moment. So soothcast is coming. It's still on the back burner. It's still being slowly allowed to simmer and become something in its own time. And the project bags, hopefully, again, I will have that to show you. And of course, the dress that will be made out of this glorious sari fabric, that's still to come down the forest path. And from the woodshed. Now, today I actually plan to show you, to start this new segment that we're going to be calling From the Woodshed, which is to show how Arik's crafting, his manifestation of his creativity, which is through wood, how that's going to feed into the offerings from wool and the forest. So I wanted to show that to you today, but it appears we have definitely run out of time. So I will save that for next week and show you some of these beautiful things that he makes with wood that really you need to see. And will play a big role in what will be coming from us. So that's coming as well. So shall we end this episode now? Let's do that.